Hey everyone, this is BT. We're about to go inside with David and myself, talking a little bit more about Chapter 5 in the Science of Getting Rich and all the wonderful things that come with saying yes and knowing who you are. Come on in. Amen. Hallelujah. All right. I love this one. And this is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but that's why we're here. We want to make sure that, we want to make sure that everyone is aware that God doesn't want us to be poor. He wants us to thrive. And that's why we're here. So, Well, David, in this episode, you focused on Chapter 5 of the Science of Getting Rich, which is titled Increasing Life.
Yeah. And
you mentioned at the beginning that nature is fully expressed while humans really aren't. You know, we struggle with things. And you talk about this a lot inside of your events that you do live. Can you talk a little bit more about how, nature doesn't seem to struggle like us human beings do?
Well, so it's a very interesting thing. I suppose let's see where I want to start with this.
It's a big one. This is a deep question I threw at you right out of the gate.
If you, especially today, like with all the different podcasts that are out there, different places to get information from, you will hear all different kinds of arguments around the idea of human potential, what's right, what's wrong, not from like a what's really wrong perspective, but just like how a person should live. Like, because you bring religion into it, and you could basically manipulate it any way that you want to. That's one of the most manipulated books in history is the Bible or the Quran or, other religious volumes. So I'm a person that struggled with these questions since I was a kid because there were so many contradictions that I saw. And there were things that just did not make any damn sense whatsoever. And one of the things that didn't make sense to me was that we come from this loving God, because I was raised Catholic, and yet there were so many people suffering in the world. And I took it to the place of okay, so they teach you this, God knows all. It's like Santa Claus, right? He knows all. He can see everything that you're doing. He knows if you're naughty or nice, that kind of an idea. And I thought, well, if God knew that humanity was going to be so fucked up, why would God create humanity and then judge us and send us to hell for all of eternity? Something about it, I understood that a lot of people believed it, and I understand that a lot of people still believe it. I think it's one of the most fucked up messages I've ever heard in my life, and it's one of the most manipulative messages that I've ever heard in my life. And I was very much prepared to accept that message as the truth if I found out that it was the truth. So when you ask me about nature, one of the reasons for my nature comments and comparisons is because I started thinking with a lot of different things, not just religion, but a lot of different things. What could we look at that is created by God or the universe, that's unadulterated, like it has not been really touched by man, that would give us an idea of what the truth of life is? And I was raised around a lot of nature. Like, I was in nature a lot when I was a kid. I loved nature. And what I noticed was that unless human beings got involved, nature didn't struggle. Nature just did nature, right? And there's a lot of contradictions in nature that we would not tolerate as human beings. But in a ways, there's also similarities. Like, for instance, nature preys upon itself, right? Nothing, and this is one of the things that I tell people all the time. There's no form of life on the planet that does not live and survive by killing another form of life, okay? Even if you're a vegetarian, those vegetables, the plants that you're eating, they have to die before you can assimilate them, right? So just because it doesn't have eyes does not mean you're not taking life. That's my point of view on it. People can think whatever they want. But the thing is, let's look at the real truth. Let's not say what feels comfortable. Let's look at what the truth is. And if you look at nature, you don't see shame. You don't see guilt. You don't see its struggle. You see a survival of the fittest take place, absolutely, for sure. I know part of the human condition is that we've evolved beyond survival of the fittest, but not really. All we've done, instead of Because what we've basically done is, in large amount, is take the people who are not the fittest and we've prolonged their ability to survive. You know what I mean? Because of medicine, because of science, because of what the human being can tolerate, that type of thing. People can live very close to death for a long period of time. So what does that have to do with this? What that has to do is that you don't see life thriving in those areas where human beings are living that close to just their base existence in life. The idea of God, in my mind, is the idea that there is, if it's true that God is good, then God would want us to be good, to do good, to create good, to create things that benefited ourselves and benefit every other person, or the other people that we're supposed to benefit. There wouldn't be these huge contradictions about us killing each other, raping each other, being racist with each other. Like those things are a misinterpretation of a lot of different ideas. So what I learned very early on, I came to the conclusion that there must be something human beings just flatly don't understand. If we are this miserable, if we have this many screwed up problems, there's something that we fundamentally do not understand. And another thing that really intrigued me, although I had no explanation of it or for it when I was a kid, was the idea of money. Money seems to be something that everybody needs, and yet it's the source of more worry, more damage, more confusion than almost anything else. And money touches everything that we do. So I was like, there's something else about this money thing that human beings don't understand. And I certainly didn't understand it. And it took a long time to actually break it down to what are the individual truths about all these different things, where you could go, here's the truth. I can explain to you why it's the truth. And here's how to change that internal structure of processing that truth inside yourself so that you can be a benefit to yourself and be benefit to other people. And it took a lot of years of study, because you have to wade through all the contradictions. You have to wade through all of them and say, I need to know what the truth is, and be prepared to accept whatever it is. It may be something that you don't like. Like I was very much of that mindset. Like I may find out that all this stuff that I've been learning is 100% true, and I don't particularly like the idea that it's 100% true, but I was prepared to live that way if it was. So that's where the journey started. That's one of the reasons that I've looked at nature, the nature in the universe, as an idea of what does this look like before human beings touch it, right? Before human beings put a meaning on it, before human beings judge it, before human beings corrupt it. What is the truth about the way God or the universe created this, and what could we learn from that? And then take that into our life and look at all the different things that we've confused and bring some sense of truth and mastery over the way that we live our life, so that we can literally be happy and treat other people kindly and move through the world fulfilled and wealthy and not have the problems that we see all over the world.
I love that. Great explanation. In the podcast, and quite often you talk about that at events as well. You talk about the concept of more life. So for someone who may be new to the podcast and maybe is listening for the first time, when you talk about more life, what does that mean first and foremost? And then how does it translate into today's fast-paced world, more life?
So you have to look at the idea of what is the intention or the modus operandi of the universe or God. The idea is life. It like if you step back and you just look at it big picture wise, it's life. It doesn't matter. Like you can call whatever you want to call it where it comes from. I don't care. You want to call it God? You want to call it the universe? You want to call it science, energy? Call it whatever you want. But it's always moving into this form that we recognize as life. That's what it is. It's movement, okay? In order for life to continue to exist, everything has to add to that. If anything's actually taking away from it, it would cease to exist. Life would literally infarctate on itself, and it would totally stop. And that's not what happens. It's continuing to expand. So there has to be an intention in there somewhere that is constantly moving everything to life. It's constantly transmuting into different forms of life. That's what we call more life. So the whole idea is about more life. Here's what we do know, that there is no death, right? Death is simply the transmutation of a physical form into another form, whether it's a non-form, which is like air, ether, or gas, or it's a physical form like dust and microbes and whatever, and then that then springs forth into life again. So if you talk to the scientist and you ask the scientist, what is energy? They'll say, energy just is. It's the cause and effect of itself. It has no beginning, no end. If you ask a religious person, what is God? They'll say, God just is. He's the cause and effect of himself, no beginning, no end, right? We're basically talking about the same thing, just different perspective, people that want to put different meanings on it. Again, like put whatever meaning on it you want. The idea is, how do we work with it? What is our understanding of it so that we can actually do good? So if we understand that the idea is more life, then that means that we need to adjust our perspective and understand ourselves from the place of more life. And when you start to think about it from that perspective, all of a sudden you find out everything is there. All the components in ourselves are there to be able to manifest into form this idea of more life. And it starts with honoring and understanding the desire that's inside of us that's telling us which way to go in life, that may be very contradicting to what a lot of the world thinks. And you have to learn to follow it anyway. Then you have to do the process of reversing beliefs that are just entirely made up of bullshit ideas and finding out what the truth is. So it's a process that a person goes to so that they can then redefine themselves into something that is not only intelligent and healthy from their own central perspective, but what are they going to actually bring to the world in a way where it's productive, where it literally helps mankind.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned desire in that, because in the episode you said that desire is your spiritual DNA seeking external expression. And when a person stifles or suppresses that desire, they destroy from within first, you mentioned, and then it spreads outward. So how does a person say yes to their desires when they may be in fear as to whether or not this is the direction they should be going? Because I know the conversation for most people is, yes, I have this desire, but what if I go in the wrong direction? What if I make a mistake? What would you say to that person when they're faced with that fear?
So it's not so much the fear, it's the meaning that they're giving to the fear. And part of this study is to really understand what fear means. So we first have to understand that we're only born with two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. All other fears are learned. So then it becomes, well, why did we learn these fears? Why did we take these fears on as part of our automatic thought process type thing? For the most part, they were with some idea of keeping us safe. There's another idea of it allows people to control us, and that's a very real thing. It's not made up. It's very real. Societies have done that all over the world. Religions have done that all over the world. And once a person takes on a fear, once they embody that fear will pretty much run their life until they find some reason to overcome it and then eradicate it. But again, it requires that, a person begin to understand it. So if I have this desire inside of me that's saying, go do this, go be this, go experience this, and I've got this fear, we have to understand first and foremost that the fear is not real. It's an idea that's inside of us. It's not going to go away until we have a different external experience that contradicts the fear. So a lot of the fears that we have are imaginary, meaning that we didn't actually experience them, but we were told about them repeatedly over a period of time. It's somebody else's ideology of the world, and we took it on ourselves because we were exposed to it for a significant period of time. It follows the idea of how is your subconscious mind programmed through constant spaced repetition or a sudden emotional impact. Well, fear can follow kind of both of those patterns, because if I'm your parent and I'm constantly telling you what my fear about something is in the world, it's emotional, right? The fear is emotional. You're scaring that child, or you're communicating fear to that child, and the child begins to internalize it. Doesn't necessarily mean he has or she has the experience. Then you have experiential fears, where something happens and you give it the meaning that I need to be afraid of this. So you kind of have to start to unravel the idea that these are internalized and we've given them meaning to some degree, but they don't necessarily, it's not the be all end all. There's also something else, which is the truth, which is that you can have a completely different experience. You can follow your desire, and you're going to make mistakes. Mistakes are an absolute. So the other meaning that we give, and I talked about this in the episode, is that we, at some point in our life, we start getting the message that it's not okay to make mistakes. Now, you've heard me talk about, like, nobody ever tells their kid they're not going to walk again because they fell down, right? But it's not too long after that we start sending that message, don't fuck it up. A kid gets, the big red F or a D or a C or whatever it is on their paper from the teacher. They bring it home. Their parents, they're in trouble with their parents, and there's like shame that goes around. It's like, you're better than this. How could you do this? You didn't study. You're not applying yourself. Like, it's all about what the kid didn't do, instead of understanding why is this child struggling with this issue. And then you have the other mistakes that happen where people get embarrassed by the mistake, and then their shame is projected onto the child. The child takes that on themselves, and they're not, they just shut themselves down into a world where they can't make mistakes. So they find this very narrow lane of where they can be, perfect or okay, and they're safe in that space, and they maintain it. The only way we ever grow out of that is by accepting the idea that we're going to make mistakes and we're going to learn. But here's the most important part, that we don't take it personally. It's not a reflection of your character, man. If you make a mistake, you made a mistake. And I don't care what the mistake is. It's not a reflection of your character, right? Now, a person that is evil, or they're going to continue to do bad things, that might be a reflection of somebody's character. But somebody who's honestly trying to do something and they screw it up, if they can accept responsibility for it, and they were like, yeah, I messed that up, I can fix that, I'll learn or do or adjust whatever I have to learn in order to go do that. I mean, that's the character of a person. The damage is done from the internalization of the shame and the guilt around a mistake, because then it becomes a reflection of who I think I am at my core, and it's absolutely not true. But it's enough to stop most people.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I'm sitting here thinking as you're saying this, and I'm going through like where I was given my sort of outlook on these sorts of things. And, I say on here that I'm risk averse and I don't like to take chances. And part of that comes from just not really owning the fact that it's okay to make mistakes. And I, as you were saying that, I was coming at it from the parent perspective, how, if my daughter didn't get perfect attendance, or she got even a B in a class, it wasn't that, it was okay to make mistakes. It was more of, what will people think? What will people think? So, when you bring that up, it's so fascinating to me. We should be, as parents, encouraging our children to make mistakes, because in the grand scheme of things, most mistakes we can come back from, and they only propel us and they teach us to try and do better the next time.
Right.
But see, the problem for me is you've got layers and layers and layers as a 40-something who is like, whenever I make a mistake, if I make a mistake even last week, I internalize it, not because I don't think I can fix it. It's because, what does that person think about me, or what does that person think about me? And it totally riddles me with shame and guilt. And I love that you brought this up, because there's so many different conversations we can have about this. But you're saying, let's say we're speaking to parents out there right now, let your kid make mistakes. They're going to fuck up. They can always come back from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I help people build businesses. I've been doing that for 21 years now. And one of the things that I always get from them is, just tell me the right thing to do. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold it. Everything's a test, right? Everything's a test. We don't like, here's what we think will work, but you have to test it and see if it works. They don't want to hear that in the beginning, right? I mean, it takes a while for them to learn to really understand that it's a test, because they don't want any kind of reference that they may fail or that they can't do it. I really believe this. In the beginning, when people first start to go down a road of self-improvement, there's a fragileness that's going on with them. They really want to believe that they have the ability to do it. Now, I know that they can, but that doesn't matter. They have to get to the point where they really believe it in themselves. A mistake is a verification that they can't in their mind, right? So they have to really understand that that's not what that means. That's the meaning they're giving the mistake. It doesn't mean that they can't. It doesn't mean that they won't. It doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. All it is a test. And the test means that this thing is working or this thing isn't working. If it's not working, great. We know it's not working. Now we can fix it. What do we need to fix it to? Let's learn what we have to learn. Let's hire who we have to hire. Let's get it going the right way. And then, success in every level, at every level, whether you're talking about sports, where you're talking about the human personality, whether you're talking about business, where you're talking about art, in a sense, it's all a math problem. It's all cause and effect. If you do the causes and you get them tighter and tighter and tighter, you will get tighter and tighter effects that are the right effects that you want to have for yourself.
Yeah, and that's a core component of what it takes to have a successful mind. I think having the awareness that you understand that mistakes are going to be made and you will come back from them and you will do it better. We're always talking on this show about what it means to, be a successful person and have that successful mindset. And really, I can make mistakes now and I might initially react a certain way, sort of internally like, oh my God, I'm ashamed. But within minutes, I've recentered myself and said, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. I can fix this for the next time. So I think that when you think about successful mind, it really comes down to the awareness that it comes with that. I think it's extremely, extremely powerful. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. Even if you don't have kids, they're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Perfection is not attainable. And that was a difficult lesson for me. When I was early on in this company and I was responsible for sending out emails, there would be days when I was getting sent to send out an email to 30,000 people and I would hover my finger over the enter return button, because if one person said the comma was in the wrong place, I would just crumble like a cheap suit. I would crumple like a cheap suit. I would be mortified because one person out of 30,000 said, hey, guess what? You fucked this up. Yeah. And guess what would happen? I would create mistake after mistake after mistake. But when I started to realize that I'm going to make mistakes, it's not like I'm like, oh, okay, no big deal. I still internalize it because I want to better my best. But at the same time, it's not life ending. No one died because a comma was out of place.
No, nobody ever died perfect either.
No, exactly. So deal with that. So, all right, I wanted to pull a quote from Wattles that you mentioned in here that I absolutely loved, and it hit me differently in this particular episode. And this is what it said. So again, we're reading from chapter 5, The Science of Getting Rich, which is titled Increasing Life. And Wattles writes, every talent we cultivate brings to the mind the desire to cultivate another talent. We are subject to the urge of life, which I bolded, seeking expression, whichever drives us on to know more, to do more, to be more. In order to know more, do more, and be more, we must have more. We must have things to use, for we learn and do and become only by using things. And this is the part that just gave me chills. We must get rich so that we can live more.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about what happens when we don't follow that urge. So this urge got you off the forklift.
Yeah.
That had to have been scary to you in the moment, right?
Yeah,
because you were in that sort of safety lane. Things weren't great, but at least it was known. So how was making that change for you personally when you went from the forklift into a bigger position? And how difficult was it early on? And did you ever sort of waver like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was very scary. And here was the scary part. The scary part was I didn't know who to believe. I had people around me that were telling me this was crazy, that reading these books, going to seminars was a con. I had people that were snickering around the idea of what my potential was. They didn't come out and say, you're stupid, but I knew that they were thinking he doesn't have what it takes to create whatever it is that he's looking to create. And in my own ignorance at the time, I didn't know what was real, and then I made some of the early mistakes that a lot of people make. They tell the wrong people, thinking that this person is my friend. This is my buddy. Yeah. He'll support me in this. And then they would laugh. They thought it was like a joke, like, get the fuck out of here. You ain't going to go do anything. You're going to be working here for the rest of your life type thing.
And a lot of times that's your family. Like there's like, you say, there's a lot of supportive family members out there, but there's also people that they never followed their urge. They never followed their desire. No. So if they can keep you where you're at, you won't exceed them and they won't feel bad about themselves.
Exactly. So in that stage when I was growing, it was simply not knowing. Everything that I was doing was a risk because there was a voice in my head that said, this not real. This is a pipe dream. This is a con. This can't really happen. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. Like I had all the traditional voices that most people hear in my head, and I didn't know anybody that was really successful. So I didn't have anybody saying to me, no, you're doing the right thing. Keep going. You're doing the right thing. So I kept following whatever came into my life at the time. If it was a book, if it was a seminar, if it was somebody that I thought I could learn from. And I didn't go into those relationships with an agenda of what can you teach me or what am I going to get from this? I went and shut up and listened. Like I really listened. I really paid attention. I studied people. I studied businesses. I studied everything that I could get my hands on from the aspect of, I know nothing. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to look and I'm going to see what looks real to me. If something doesn't resonate with me, I'm going to find out why. Why am I internally rejecting it? Or why do I have judgment around it and really get to the truth? And it took a period of time to do that, but I kept moving forward, a little bit of time. With each little bit, I was getting a little bit more experience, which then started stacking from a place of like self-confidence, right? So then I went into a place where I was working for another company and I actually had the ability to put some of this to work, what I was learning. And I had big successes with this company. Of course, I had already learned my lesson not to be talking to people about what I was doing because they would laugh at you. But I would apply this to the work that I was doing for this company, and I had big wins there. So I knew that it was working. I knew that I was on the right track. I didn't know where it was leading, didn't know where it was going, but I always knew that there was something else that was coming. I just needed to keep educating myself and moving forward, testing it, working it, correcting my mistakes, and to continue to move forward. And that was a period of about 7 years. And then at the end of that 7 years, I'm like, I'm ready. I'm gonna start my own business and go.
Well, and it started with yeses. Like I love that you basically just owned up to the fact that I was just going to say yes to anything that came in because I hear a lot of people, whether it's at events of yours, they'll come up to the mic, and when you hear a person say, "I know," immediately the hairs on the back of my neck stand up a little bit because the truth is that you're trying to project that you know all of this when in actuality you aren't. So I love that you just said, I went to it wide open. Whatever was going to come in was going to come in. And I was going to make sure that I didn't come across as I know this to protect myself. Yeah. I'm going to put up a layer of I knows on myself so that these people can't judge me because I can be more intellectual. When in actuality, just saying yes comes from within. That heart desire that comes from within. You said yes, you grew from it, and here we are today.
Well, almost all of these things that I did costed money that I didn't have. I'd figure out how to earn the money while I was working. There was one time that I needed extra money, and I don't think I've ever talked about this before. I literally took on a paper route at 2:00 in the morning with my car. And I would deliver papers in these huge apartment buildings. So I would pick up these papers. I had 2 of them. And I would go, and there were like hundreds of apartments in these buildings, and I would go from floor to floor to floor to floor. It took me about 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the night. And it wasn't 2 o'clock in the morning. It was midnight. I would start at midnight and I would get done around 3 in the morning. And I would deliver papers. And it was a way for me to bring in a few extra $100 by doing it.
And you weren't a teenager. This is you're an adult.
I was in my 20s. I was almost 30 years old.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you weren't going to stop.
No,
you were going to
I would
whatever.
do anything that I could to make a few extra bucks so that I could continue following this education that I was getting.
Yeah, you wanted it bad enough.
I wanted it that bad.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. I think another thing that's important to rehash there, that what you just mentioned, was it's important to have sort of a protective bubble around you. And I've heard you mention several times more recently that be very mindful about who you share your dream with.
100%.
Because if you share it to the wrong person and you're not emotionally aware of who you are and what you want, if someone says even one thing and gives you the suggestion it's not going to work, it very easily could veer you off course and you 100%. Won't do it.
Yeah, it could set you back further than you know.
Yeah.
The wrong comment from the right person can deflate you like the air out of a balloon when a needle hits it. Like you have, and the thing is obviously you can't protect yourself from every single person, but you learn what to say and what not to say and who to share things with and who. I mean, it's like getting punched in the stomach, right? If you think somebody's going to hit you in the stomach, you learn pretty damn quick, or be punched in the nose, you learn pretty quick to stay the hell away from that person. And when somebody does that to your dream, it hurts the same way emotionally. Yeah. It feels the same way. It sucks. It's not a good thing.
100%. Okay, let's end with this. So in the episode, you talked about someone saying, I can't do this because I don't have the money, which you just touched on a moment ago. What they're basically saying is they don't deserve it. They're not worthy.
They don't want it bad enough.
They don't want it bad enough.
They don't want it bad enough.
So to someone out there listening right now, do you have any quick strategies you can hit them with to help a person break through that, unworthiness that you do deserve to be rich? God wants you, intends you to be rich?
Yeah. So I understand where they get stuck in their head. They want to do something and they're blocked by an obstacle that they believe to be real. Time, money, relationship, like whatever their obstacle is. It's bullshit. That's the first thing they have to know. What you need to do is you need to double out on your desire of what it is that you want to do. If you decide, I'm doing this, I don't know how, but I'm doing this, period, and you stay in that mindset, you will start to see opportunities to do whatever you need to do to overcome whatever the obstacle is. That's what I did. My very first seminar, I've told this story a million times. I had just bought a boat. It was one of my very first goals in life. I was in my 20s. I had paid the boat off, and I really loved that boat, and I had an opportunity to go to this seminar, and the seminar was about half of what the frickin' boat cost, right? So I looked in the driveway, I saw the boat, and I thought to myself, if I figure out what I'm doing, I can buy any boat that I want. I sold the boat that week. I went to the seminar. I bought myself a computer. I learned how to use a computer. This is like way back in the early 90s, learned how to use a computer. And I'm like, no, I'm moving forward. So if I hadn't done that, I don't think I'd be here today.
100%. Yeah.
I'd have the boat, but I wouldn't have anything else.
Right. And you probably wouldn't be nearly as happy as you are right now.
And no, I'd be miserable.
You would have played it safe.
I'd be miserable.
Well, this has been an outstanding inside. Definitely encourage people to go back and listen to yesterday's episode about this. It was fantastic, and it's a good reminder that it's inside of you. You just got to go out and make it happen. So thanks for coming inside.
Yeah.
Hey, if you liked this video, be sure to check out the content episode that goes alongside of this, and be sure to also like it, subscribe, and definitely leave us a comment below because we'd love to hear how this resonated with you. We'll see you on the next one.